everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, and tonight I am doing more potting up. But before I get started planting tonight, I actually have to harvest the seed from this winter interest Foodscape container. So specifically, I'm going to be harvesting the barley seed, which is really simple to do. You literally just pop it off the top, put it into a container so that I can thresh and winnow it later this weekend. But I'm also going to be saving seed off of my spinach, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that because the spinach seed isn't quite ripe, but I am ready to get this pot replanted. Okay, now that I have the barley all harvested, the tips off of it, I am just going to pull these spinach out, and I'm actually just going to pot them up. That way, it's probably 2 weeks out from the seed to actually be ripe. I just want to collect my own seed. And now I'm ready to actually pull these plants out. And this is always an exciting part because, oh yeah, the grains grow really big root systems. So there's probably no way for me to do this elegantly. So I'm actually going to put this on time lapse. That way if I make a huge mess, it's not as noticeable. Alright, so the entire root ball is completely rooted through. So the more logical solution for me, because this is way too heavy for me to lift, and I don't need to hurt myself, because I have hurt myself many times trying to do something that my body can't handle. I am going to actually use the dolly. I'm going to dolly this back to my woodland compost pile, and I'm going to get this pot emptied so I can refill it with soil cube and get it planted for the summer. So let me show you up close and personal this Crescent Gardens container, because the one I did last night was already planted. So you see how nice and tall it is, but then on the inside it has kind of like a false bottom. So it's still a lot of area to be able to fill with soil, but that actually helps with additional drainage. So it's a pretty critical component. And I'm just gonna fill it up with soil cube, and then I'm gonna get some things planted in it. I really need to get this pot, this root pouch, which I did for a demonstration, that needs to get potted up. So my original plan was to put this and this basil together in this container. I'm pretty pleased with this potted up Foodscape container in my Crescent Gardens pot. Kind of the best of all worlds here. And again, I'm using this curlicue thing. You know, I've used these in the past, and I feel like I said in my video that I posted yesterday, I don't totally care if it doesn't work for the entire season. It provides the what I need for right now, and frankly it looks better than a tomato cage, and tomato cages don't work for the entire season here in North Carolina, so there's really no point in wasting your time with those. So, you know, in the long run, I'm probably gonna have to move all of these pots that have tomatoes into a space that has cattle fence located behind it so that I can stake them properly. But for the next couple of weeks, or really like till the end of June, beginning of July, I think I'm gonna be fine staking them this way. I'm saying this more as a reminder to myself because we're in that stage right now in North Carolina where tomatoes look beautiful, and they're like growing really vigorously, and they're green, and there's nothing that's gone wrong yet, and so they look really pretty. And I need to never forget what they actually look like, because this is a very short-lived moment where you would actually call a tomato ornamental. I love tomatoes. I am not talking smack. I love making sauce and salsa. I love canning. So I'm never not gonna grow tomatoes, but I also can't be lulled into this idea that tomatoes are pretty and easy and they don't require substantial staking, because by the middle of July here, they do. They require a significant amount of effort, and probably this isn't going to totally cut the mustard, but for right now, I think I'm okay. All right, I'm gonna wheel this into place, get it watered in, and I have got some big clouds forming, so fingers crossed, I'm gonna finally get some rain. Everybody else in Raleigh seems to have gotten storms the last few days, but it has not rained here. And I have been running water for like 12 hours a day. So I would love to be able to turn my sprinkler off with a good conscience, knowing that my garden is actually going to get some moisture from the sky. So does anybody else do the great pot shuffle, or is this just me? I'm actually planning on taking these broccoli, which aren't really doing that great, out of these containers and planting them into the garden. Fingers crossed, maybe I'll get some broccoli to harvest. Getting really late in the season here in North Carolina for these cool crops, which have clearly been devoured by cabbage worms. But what I really want to do is transplant these tall cortellini. I've had these now for 3 years. And when we get really cold in the winter, I put them in my heated shed. They've just grown so beautifully. They're actually starting to get a trunk. And I'm just gonna clean these up, and I'm gonna put them into these white planters. And I'm actually gonna flank an agapanthus on my back porch, which I think is gonna look really cool. And then to mix in some color, I'm gonna use some trial plants. And I'll admit, I would not ordinarily I wouldn't really buy an Impatience, period. And I certainly wouldn't buy this color pink. This is not a brie shade, but I'm trialing these, and this is Beacon Rose Impatience. And, you know, the point of trialing this is to see, you know, how it performs here in North Carolina through the summer, make sure that it doesn't have any disease problems. And so I actually think that this doesn't look too bad next to this burgundy. And then to kind of balance it out, I'm gonna actually mix in these the sky blue easy wave petunia, which again is another plant that I'm trialing for Pan American. And I really love being able to trial plants. I love that they offer this opportunity for me. I give them honest advice, or not advice, but my honest reflection on how their plants have performed. And it's a relationship that I value greatly. So I think that actually this combination, even though it's not something that I would necessarily pick out at a garden center, I think it's going to be pretty good. And the area that I'm putting these in is relatively shady. It's sort of a nook along my brick patio in the back that actually gets shade because of the patio umbrella. So if the umbrella wasn't up, it would be far more sun. So then I'm going to be able to use these planters to pot in my bushel and berry, raspberry and blackberry. And that way I'll really be able to test the limits on those, and those will be individual plants in these black squares, which live out in my driveway next to my live wall. So stay tuned for my process. And I hope this will inspire you to do some fun container gardening this summer. So as usual, the final step for this is to add a handful of garden tone. I use garden tone kind of generically for everything through the summer season. It works great. Can't burn anything with it. And now I'm going to mulch lightly with triple shred hardwood. This really just helps, you know, finish off the pot, prevents any soil from, you know, coming out if you water it too hard or if it rains. And I think it just really makes the pot look more professional and finished. So once I get these moved in place and watered in, because these are white pots, so aren't always most practical just as far as like showing dirt. I'm actually going to wash these pots off. The great thing about white pots though is that they do reflect the sun. So I originally bought these to grow tomatoes in, and I'm probably going to regret that I'm not growing tomatoes in these, but where I'm putting these is just like a highly visible aesthetic area, and it definitely doesn't get enough sun for tomatoes, so it's not the right area, even though the pots themselves are really quite ideal for plants like tomatoes that have sensitive root systems. All right. I'm pretty pleased with how these look. I think they're gonna look great through the summertime. Again, where these are going also has really easy access to a hose, and that is always the most critical part of container gardening. Make it convenient for yourself, because you can't not water your pots. Since I've been so busy doing so many different containers, I thought that it would be nice to include a Foodscape container tour in this video. So let's just take a quick stroll around my garden. So here in my driveway, you can see I have a lot of pots. This of course has really easy access to a hose. You can see the hose right there. And I have this bigger Crescent Gardens pot right here filled with some of my favorite plants. This has a basil that I've been harvesting a lot from. Got a tomato planted in there, some Nicotiana, some Dianthus, and then the real trick to all of this is the Plectranthus. This will act as the spiller, and it deters animals because it's a really smelly, kind of sticky foliage, so deer and rabbits hate it. Now on either side of that, I have rice, and you can see the rice on the left didn't have good germination, so I've actually re-sown the seed in there to fill it out, because of course it should look like this. This is the rice that I did a video on a few weeks ago. This is Black Madres in pots with no drainage holes, sitting out here in full sun in my driveway. And I just planted these. These are from Bushel and Berry. This is Blackberry baby cakes and raspberry shortcake. Look at how cute that raspberry is. It's so short. These are like the new and improved genetics that Bushel and Berry are introducing to make growing these berries easier. So, you know, they fruit on new wood, they don't spread as vigorously, they're just in general better behaved, better disease resistance. So I'm really happy to be growing those. And in addition to that, I'm growing a couple of new strawberries from Bushel and Berry, which have been really beautiful. You know, I'm a huge strawberry fan. Literally adjacent here is Chandler. But Chandler pretty much, even though it's day neutral, it's kind of stopped flowering. I think it's gotten stressed out from being in the 90s. But you can see these are just continuing to put out new flowers and fruit. So there's 3 in the series, and they each have different flower colors. This is Rosy Bell here, mixed in with purple cabbage and a San Marzano tomato. Over here in this pot, this is Scarlet Bell strawberry, and I think, oh yeah, look, there's ripe fruit right there. I'm gonna go ahead and eat it. And that I mixed in with some mint. The idea that I'll be able to harvest cocktails from this pot. Oh, good strawberry. Of course, the live wall, it's doing well. I've trimmed a lot on it because I had root cuttings from it, so I can get the other side replanted with coleus. These containers that I did at different times of the spring are growing out really nicely. I'm really impressed with this dahlia. It just keeps on blooming. And over here, this tomato has grown so much. I need to look back at a video because I don't remember what variety it is, naturally. So I still have a few containers that are filled with cool season stuff, and this one, I mean, look at how beautiful that wheat is. And this Swiss chard, I'm just letting this Swiss chard go to flower, or to go to seed, although last night in the rain, this giant heavy stalk, which would be all the way up there, broke off. So, you know, it's time for me to undo these pots. I know it is. Same thing with this pot. That conifer, that Platyclatus here needs to get planted, and this Carex would love to go in the ground. So, you know, I'll get to it. Those are my last two, I think. So I'm actually doing pretty good. Over here, this Foodscape planter is doing wonderfully. I just did this the other day. This is Snowy Belle. It's the white flowered form from the Bushel and Berry strawberry series. I just harvested the big ripe fruit on that. It was delicious. So this has, again, a tomato and a trial petunia and a trial dianthus planted in there. And it's doing really well. Well, as I walk out back, I can't resist getting a little video footage of Cubby Brewster. Hey, Chubbs. Can you say hi? So one thing I've done this year, which has made potting so much easier, is setting up this foldable table. And I don't have to be bent over or working out of a wheelbarrow. It's just really been transformative for my potting up experience. So I still have some more rice to plant, and all of this stuff is staged to be, well, the potatoes are staged to start being harvested. The rest of these sweet potatoes are staged to go in the ground. Of course, I'm running low on soil cube, and admittedly, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to order more. So in the fire pit area, a lot of pots in here, again, because it's easy to reach with a hose. These planters that I did, you know, over a month ago, they're doing great. I mean, look at how strong and beautiful that tomato is. And in here, the tomato's enormous. Look at the potatoes that are growing. Same thing with all this parsley, which is in bloom. But look at that tomato. I've got to get it staked because it's just flopping around. And of course, back there, this is another crescent pot that has my key lime planted in it, along with some broccoli. And this is another planter from Crescent, which is doing great, and it's got this beautiful maple. What I love about this one is that it has a water reservoir, so it really doesn't need to be watered all that often, which is so helpful. Over here, more pots. You almost can't even distinguish where the plants are coming from. But again, you know, employing the use of that Plectranthus, that right there, which is stinky, helps keep the animals from eating the other plants in these pots. Here's another type of Plectranthus. See, there's a lot of different species and varieties to choose from. So we're lucky here in North Carolina. We have Big Bloomers Flower Farm, which sells a wide assortment. I would recommend just doing a Google search for them. Of course, I have a ton more plants to go in the ground and that are suitable for containers, so I feel like I have a lot of options. And along this side of the greenhouse, everything's doing really well in pots over here, including these 100-gallon root pouches. So far so good with container foodscaping for 2021 summer. And as you can see here, I have these two beautiful planters staged next to this agapanthus that's just about to explode into flower. I'm really excited to give you updates on all of the containers that I have growing for the 2021 summer season. Now, if you found this video to be amusing or helpful in any way, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the Breathe the Plant Lady YouTube channel, and be sure to hit that bell notification so you'll know when I post a new video. And as always, thank you so much for watching.